Are you an alchemist type, constantly starting something new only to feel stuck and frustrated when the progress seems to plateau? What if I told you that this frustration isn't a sign to quit, but actually a crucial part of your journey? In this video, I'm going to show you how to break free from that cycle of starting and quitting, unlock your true potential, and learn how to harness the power of your frustration to create the breakthrough you've been waiting for. If you don't know your human design type, I encourage you to pause the video and find out. You can do that by running your free chart using the link in the description. You will have to know your exact birth date, birth time, and birthplace in order to run an accurate chart. As we explore the parts of your story that make you the main character you're here playing out in this story, the you that is creating your reality, we're going to be exploring it through the lens of the not self, or what you might think of sometimes as the shadow aspect of the character. Your not self, this shadow aspect, are the things that we would mark or note as flaws. We're going to be looking at those things that sometimes don't allow us to maximize the actual light that we are to come through the shadow elements of our story. I'm going to share with you over the next few slides information about the energy type, the emotional theme, how your type creates, the shadow element of the type, and the highest potential of your type. And as you're listening to the information, you can pay attention to where perhaps you might sometimes be living out these shadow elements, these shadow aspects of your energy type. This is not for you to self-judge or self-criticize or beat yourself up. It's to understand and have an awareness of these aspects. We all live out the shadow elements at times, no matter what. We go through these cycles where we're under stress, we're growing, and things are disruptive. Everyone experiences these shadow sides. It's an exploration and intention for you to look at if you're chronically living in that shadow space. Are there lessons for you? Is there something in your soul and your life curriculum that you really need to explore in order to take back control over this part of your story and support yourself in bringing out more light or bringing through more light? Today, we're specifically focusing on the alchemist or the generator energy type. And as you listen to the information about this type and the shadow elements, you can write down any of those shadow elements that stand out to you. And again, the purpose is not to beat yourself up or to criticize or judge yourself, but just to have an awareness for you to begin to explore. If you're going to write a story and follow the arc of this story, then you have to have awareness first. You have to know where you are in the story of your character in order for you to take back control of that story or to write a new narrative for yourself as the main character. We're going to start with exploring the not self, this shadow self, so that you can begin to look at where you are now potentially and what are some of the things that you're going to do in your story to begin to work with these parts to choose to bring out the higher aspect. So as you're listening, you can write these things down, but also write down any of the high potential, the highest potential, or the expanded elements. Even if you're not living them yet, that's okay. Because we're going to, through awareness and doing the light work, you're going to take back control over your story. And so when we look at the storytelling layers in the human design chart, we see the first layer in the chart is your main character. And in human design, that main character is represented by type. And there are 5 main types. It's also by the lines in your profile, which is going to tell you a little bit more about the purpose of your character, what they're here to fulfill, and the things that your character needs in order to feel grounded and stable and settled. But we'll dive into each of the profiles in other videos, so be sure you're subscribed to the channel to not miss those. So you see here are the 5 quantum human design types, and next to each of the names in parentheses is the traditional human design type name. Your type tells us a lot about your unique way of interacting with the quantum field, how divine source communicates with you and through you. Your type tells you a lot about the ultimate purpose of the main character in your story. And so the 5 types in quantum human design are the initiator, the orchestrator, the alchemist, the time bender, and the calibrator. And like I said, today we'll be focusing specifically on the alchemist or generator type. If you want to learn about the other types, you can click on the types playlist in the description of this video. Your type is your unique way of interacting with the quantum field. Or another way of saying this is how your muse or your creative source communicates with you and through you. Each type has a purpose, an emotional theme, and a potential challenge. Just like any character in a good movie. Each of the 5 types in human design also have a unique role, a unique way of making decisions, and a unique way of using their energy and sustaining their energy in their lives. When people first encounter human design, they usually can relate to the story of their traditional human design type. Oftentimes, it starts to help them make sense of how they have felt inside of themselves, why they've met with some of the struggles and the obstacles that they've experienced. It can illuminate where perhaps they have not lived aligned with their natural energy blueprint. And when they've been living out of alignment with their energy type, they experience pain or burnout or confusion or struggle or feeling like they're not fulfilling their potential. And they will experience their emotional theme. Each of the emotional themes are different for each of the 5 types. So when our emotional themes get activated, that can make us feel stuck, feel angry. We can't quite break through to fulfill this potential that we feel inside of ourselves. And each type also has a specific strategy. And the purpose of the strategy is to help you to get back into your body, to help you remember what it feels like to trust the decision-making process that is natural for your energy type. The strategy for each type is about taking you out of the painful, not self-conditioned expression and bringing you back to baseline. This is a process that often takes time because we have to remember how our body feels in response to what feels good, right, and correct. We have to remember how to trust our gut or trust our heart to sometimes bypass the voices in our head and bring ourselves back to a natural truth that is aligned not just with mind, but body and spirit as well. So as we go through our exploration of the alchemist or the generator type today, I want you to pay attention to the purpose of your type, the emotional theme, and those places where you may be challenged to fulfill the purpose of your type. But I also want you to think about the times in your life when you have made decisions that were good, that were right, and were aligned. Connect in with your body and really feel what your body's response to truth and alignment feels like. If you practice following your strategy for your type, you will eventually, over time, bring yourself back to baseline. And eventually, as you sit at that baseline place, you will learn to know the difference between truth, and that's truth with a capital T. You'll know what it's like to be in that truth for you or not. Now, this length of time can vary from person to person. It depends on where you're at in your level of consciousness or awareness of this, how much inner work you've done. It depends on your own lived experiences and just where you are in your own journey of personal growth and evolution. What is your truth? What is your path? What are your decisions to make? What feels right, good, and correct for you? And when you remember to live from this place of being deeply aligned with your baseline character's identity, that true story of this character that you came here to play, then that's when you move from the average baseline into the journey of exploring what else is possible. You ask, how can I now take the story of who this character is and grow it, evolve it, push it past the average baseline expression and evolve it into an even higher expression of purpose, a higher expression of the story. As we're looking at this energy type, it's called the Alchemist in quantum human design. Now, the quantum human design names are the names that we give the expanded expression, the evolved expression of each energy type. So generator is the baseline name of this energy type. On the left-hand side, you have the conditioned expression. In the midpoint, you have the baseline. And then on the right, you have the exalted or expanded expression, where the generator becomes the alchemist. In the conditioned expression, in the shadow, the not self, we have the themes of frustration, quitting, feeling unfulfilled, and burnout. And oftentimes burnout, by the way, for this alchemist energy type, or this generator energy type, can look like you've settled, like you're just living your life in mediocrity, meaning because of the quality of the energy that you hold, you can just kind of keep going through the motions, but you've settled for mediocrity, or you've settled for feeling unfulfilled. Once you get back in touch with that baseline expression, then you have all this room for growth. The generator eventually evolves into the full expression, and that full expression of the alchemist story, they become or evolve into the alchemist. The alchemist energy types are about 37% of the population. They have a role in this life to become an expert at learning. It's literally the job of the generator to become an expert at becoming an expert, to master the experience of fulfilling their potential, that journey of doing the work of learning and mastering the material world and mastering the self as you play in the material world, as you build and as you do the work of the world. That experience is a learning process, and it's a learning process that has a naturally evolving cycle. The alchemist types are here to build and to do the work of the world by learning how to best fulfill their full potential. That fulfillment happens through this stair-step learning curve. If you're an alchemist, it's natural for you to start something new. Once you begin that something new, within a few weeks, you have this surge in mastery and you begin to get better at whatever it is that you're learning. So as you practice and you take lessons or you start this new job, you learn this new skill set or whatever it is that you're doing, whatever the next level of creation process is that you would embark on, you will begin the process by starting to get good at it. So as you're growing in your skill set and you begin the process of learning whatever it is that you started, it is very normal that once you begin to learn, you have this initial surge in mastery, but then you hit a plateau. So let's say, for example, if you started taking tennis lessons, and in the beginning of taking tennis lessons, you might learn how to hit the ball, you learn how to serve. And as you go about your lessons and practice, you're getting better and better. But eventually you might find that no matter how much you practice or how many lessons you take, your skill set gets kind of stuck. You don't budge. You really don't get any better. Or maybe you started a new job and you got a handle on the skill set that you needed for that job and you got really good at it. It's natural for the generator types to eventually feel kind of stuck in that job. Like you've learned everything, you've got everything down pat, you have this rhythm and routine, but now you're just sort of sitting there and nothing else is really happening. These stuck cycles or these plateaus are part of your learning curve. They're normal and they're natural for the generators. And what happens for most is when they hit these plateaus in this growth cycle, in their learning process, they feel stuck. And then when they feel stuck, they get frustrated and then they tend to quit. And what happens is they quit and then they start something else new. And then they have that initial surge in mastery. And then they hit a plateau and then they get stuck and then they get frustrated and then they quit. And they start something new and then they have the initial surge. You see, it's a continuous cycle. It can become this continuous cycle of starting something new, getting really good at it, that's with that surge in mastery. Then they hit that plateau, they get stuck, and then they quit. And it can just go on without awareness of really what's going on. But the frustration that they experience is not just frustration of being on this plateau. It's part of the natural energy and part of the natural flow and process of the generator types. When they don't live true to their nature and they don't know how to interpret this work and these plateaus, they don't understand what's really happening. They start to feel like there's this immense untapped potential living inside of them. And that no matter what they do, no matter what they start, they can't quite access that potential, that they can't really fulfill it, this potential that lives in them. And that can feel really frustrating. But it's because they're not necessarily supposed to quit every time they hit this plateau, because the plateau is really a pause in the learning process. It's a pause in the integration of the expertise of the experience. What's happening is when they hit these plateaus, they need to learn how to stay on the plateau, to be with the frustration and that sense of stuckness that they feel until either a new opportunity shows up that feels right, meaning they don't go looking for a new opportunity. They sit with it, they be with it, they feel it, they understand what's happening, and they wait for something else to show up that may feel right, or they have a breakthrough. And that breakthrough actually takes the generator into this new surge of mastery, into a new stair-step learning curve. And then that new surge of mastery, they either may get a new job or a raise or more recognition or more responsibilities, or something happens to change the situation. So if we go back to the tennis playing analogy, all of a sudden they wake up one morning and they've learned something new. Their serve gets better, their backhand improves until they hit another plateau. And then sitting on that plateau, they can either be present with it, be present to the frustration, understand and be aware of what's happening, feel and sense the energy that is building for the breakthrough. And they can either wait and see what shows up, or they can quit at that point in response to something else showing up. Or like I said, they can wait for that breakthrough to happen, and then they'll go through another next surge in mastery. So the challenge here is learning how to interpret those plateaus, to learn how to sit there and to assess, is it time for me to do something new? Or do I need to be here and sit until I have a breakthrough? And I keep going on my trajectory here in my growth, in my expertise. Do I need to focus on something else for a moment and come back to this? And, then I'll experience my breakthrough. The trick to knowing how to navigate these frustrating plateaus and to know whether to stay and wait for the momentum to build that leads up to the breakthrough or when it's time to quit is knowing how to drop into the wisdom of your body, the guidance system that is innate to the generator types. So there are two types of generator types, the generator, which we call the alchemist in quantum human design, and the manifesting generator, which is called the time bender in quantum human design. And we'll talk about the time benders or the manifesting generators in our next video. So these two types, both of these types have defined sacrals, which is an internal motor that is unique to them. It's a way of activating a gut level intuition, this gut level instinct about knowing what's the next right step for them to take. That motor transcends the mind. And I say that specifically because we are so well trained to figure things out with our minds, to think our way through things, to do what is reasonable and logical. And while there are places where reasoning and logic are important and really vital ways of understanding information, when we rely on the mind to figure out our way, we oftentimes miss those internal, visceral body cues and clues that let us know when we're in alignment with our right path. So for the alchemist and the time bender types, that visceral physical embodiment of this feels good and right, or this doesn't feel good and right, comes from a motor in the chart called the sacral. So if you look at this slide, you'll see just below the heart, which is the G center on this chart, there's a square that's colored in. That is the sacral motor. So the two energy types that will always have this motor center colored in are the alchemists or the generators and the time benders and the manifesting generators. This motor sits there often almost dormant if you don't know how to activate it and use it, or if it's been shut off because you've been trained and taught and have bought into this idea that you have to make good decisions with your mind, that you have to figure things out with your mind. So the goal is turning this motor on, is to actually get you back into your body so that you can sense and feel what is good, right, and correct for you. So once this motor is turned on, it's incredibly direction giving. It is a direction giving force. It is a direction giving energy force. It's difficult to lie when you have this energy turned on. It's difficult to not know what is true for you when this motor gets turned on, because that is your truth. Its response is your truth. And a little bit of a cautionary note is as you activate this energy in your life, the alchemists and time benders can be prepared to become relentlessly honest with yourself, because you cannot unknow what the sacral knows. You cannot deny what the sacral knows at a certain point. The strength of this force and the awareness of the alignment that the energy of the center brings can make it very difficult for you to lie to yourself, meaning to say yes when you want to say no, or say no when you want to say yes. So it's really your superpower. This motor, much like a car, gets turned on with a key or a remote these days. This motor gets turned on with sound, and it makes two sounds, and these sounds transcend your thinking mind. They give you the power to almost bypass, if you will, the frenetic thinking or the fear-based thinking that we sometimes have in our minds, and allow us to know viscerally which direction we should go. The whole saying of, you know the truth by how it feels. So in particular, when we're on a plateau, this motor gives you insights about whether it's time to quit or whether it's time to stay the course. And so the sound that turns on this motor are uh-huh and uh-uh, or mm-hmm, or mm-mm. So these sounds of uh-huh or uh-uh or mm-hmm or mm-mm, they have been conditioned out of most of the generator types. Many have learned to not make those sounds because they're rude, to use your words, even though they may feel really natural to the energy types. So you have to relearn how to tap back in to your natural sound that you make in response to these yes or no questions. And that is your truth. because we've been conditioned to use our thinking minds and our reasoning. So, what happens when we begin to use words for our decisions as a defined sacral type, or words for answers, then you're dropping into the conditioned expression. And it's difficult for the generator types to orient themselves around their natural inner compass, which is so much a part of what the generator truth and process is about. The recovery process, the process that takes us from the conditioned experience where we feel frustrated and stuck and unfulfilled with that untapped potential that we've been chasing over the arc of our lives. To move us out of that conditioned expression to the baseline experience of the generator, we have to follow the generator strategy, which is to wait to respond. As a generator type, you have to wait and see what shows up, not figure out, not choose, not pursue, not force things, not make things happen, not start, but rather to kind of stop everything and to wait and see what shows up in your outer reality for you to respond to. And there's a fear in doing this. There's a fear in stopping the doing, which makes sense as you're naturally designed to do as a generator type. You're naturally a doer. You're a builder of the material world. You're here to work in the traditional way that we think of working, provided that your work is fulfilling for you. And it doesn't necessarily mean that the job itself is fulfilling, but it has to be fulfilling something big for you, something juicy, something important in your life. And it might be just that your job fulfills your role as a provider for your family, or it might be a job that gives you the opportunity to pursue a passion project on the side. Whatever it is that you're doing, it has to be bringing you directly or indirectly to a place of fulfillment. And when you wait, when you stop everything and you're waiting to see what shows up, the beautiful part about this from the generator story is that you really don't wait that long. There's always something happening in a generator's life, a generator's story for them to respond to. So when you stop and wait and you drop into that visceral place where things show up, you respond to them with your sacral sounds. The uh-huh, or uh-uh, or the mm-hmm, or mm-mm. And you give yourself permission to follow the mm-hmm and uh-uh, and you learn to tune in to the power and the juiciness of that responsive nature that is just so much a part of you. You begin to respond to the opportunities that take you to the next right place, and the next right place, or that next right surge in mastery, the next right stair step in your stair step learning curve, so that eventually you find those things that are yours to complete. You find those things that are yours to stick with. And you find those places where ultimately, through that responsive nature, through that tuning into the body's alignment with what's right for you, you get to fulfill what feels like all of that untapped potential within yourself. And so the emotional theme for the generator type is frustration. And that frustration happens from two different sources. The first, as we've talked about, is that feeling like, why do I always start and quit, and I never really get to tap into my potential? If that's a chronic experience that you might be having as an alchemist right now, then the big important thing for you to pay attention to is learning to wait, to stop doing everything and just really get that sacral experience, that sacral sound, that energy tuned in and turned on. You stop everything and get into a space where you just begin to follow the little small decisions at first. You can practice that just step by step with the small stuff, with the intention of just getting yourself reconnected to the juiciness and the frequency of your natural sacral sound. So it literally is a frequency of energy. And once you begin to use this energy, it is a life force that gets turned on. You become more powerful. You become more energetic. You have greater access to vitality and life force energy. And your capacity to do actually goes up exponentially. Often generator types can be stuck in situations that are not fulfilling because they have a different kind of energy than the initiators, the orchestrators, and the calibrators. They can kind of work at this half-satisfied place, this half-satisfied state. They can kind of numb themselves out and just go through the motions of being at work or being in a job. But there is a price to pay for that. And that price is frustration and ultimately feeling unfulfilled. So learning how to respond and learning to connect to that inner energy of vitality and vibrance, truth, and alignment that comes with turning on and tuning into your sacral energy can really help the generator types who are actually experiencing that chronic state of frustration wake up to new possibilities and new potentials, to actually activate what they know is sleeping, oftentimes inside of themselves. The second source of frustration can be, of course, those plateaus. Sitting on those plateaus and feeling like you've done everything right, you've practiced, you've took the lessons, you did the work, you showed up for your job, you took time to really learn what you were doing, and no matter what you did, you're still stuck. You're not making any progress. And so that frustration that happens when you're sitting on those plateaus and in that space is important for you to interpret, to really ask yourself and let your sacral answer, not your mind. Do I need to quit now? Is it time for me to quit? Do I sit with this experience? Do I need to wait? Am I on the cusp of a breakthrough? Do I really want to keep working at this? And it really works best if you can have somebody else ask you those yes or no questions. So that way you can catch whether or not you're responding with your sacral or you're getting in your head and responding with your thinking mind. So if your answer is yes to the question, do I really want to keep working at this? Then you have to figure out, how do I be with my frustration and transform it into an understanding that this frustration is actually momentum building and that I'm on the cusp of a breakthrough. And I have to sit here and be with it. And I have to manage my energy in the interim. I have to keep my mindset clean and positive and faithful. I need to move my body so that when the frustration builds up, it doesn't become physical and I go for a walk or I get myself out of my own frustrated funk. I learn how to work with being frustrated and still being productive and know that frustration is actually a symptom of energy building for the next new opportunity. Or if you don't respond to staying and it's time for you to quit, if something else shows up that feels better, that feels more exciting, that feels more intriguing, that's more interesting or more aligned, then you quit. But only when something else shows up should you quit. And that begins then the next new thing with the understanding that you're still going to hit another plateau. You will still hit another cycle of frustration because it's normal and it's natural for this energy type. The challenge, if you will, is learning how to be with the frustration, how to interpret it correctly so that you're not just stuck in these endless cycles of starting and quitting and starting and quitting and never fulfilling your full potential. Once you get it, once you really understand what your life path and truth feels like to you and for you, that feels good and right and aligned, like what it feels like in your body, and you begin to live at this baseline level as a generator, then you begin to move from the generator into the alchemist expression. As you evolve your purpose into the quantum purpose as the alchemist, your new purpose is to physically manifest creativity and express yourself through devotion, meaning it is the role of the alchemist to physically embody creativity, to be creative. And I'm not just talking about creativity in the context of art or paint or glitter. I'm talking about the ability to literally create. You become a creative. And that creative process is one that's expressed through devotion, which means it's one that's built from a practice. It's one that you apply yourself to and you study and you learn and you correct and you grow and you practice and you devote and you study and you correct and you work and you grow. It's a constant process of cultivating through practice, through devotion, the fulfillment of your skills, the fulfillment of who your main character is, the fulfillment of your full potential. And of course, in doing that, you create beauty, evolution, and the work, whatever that may be, that embodies that journey of you as a learning, growing, evolving expert at being an expert of the earthly plane. So when we're telling the story of the generator from the conditioned expression, moving to the baseline of the generator, beyond that into the expression, the quantum expression as the alchemist, the contemplations that you can ask yourself are, am I expressing my mastery? Or have I gotten into a pattern and cycle of settling for less? Am I stuck? Am I frustrated? Do I not allow myself to fulfill my potential because of these cycles of quitting and frustration? And does frustration keep me from my mastery? Does it keep me from my destiny? Does it keep me from tapping into the fulfillment of the true story of who I am as this character? and my full potential. An additional challenge for the generator types, the alchemists, include cultivating endurance. It's important for the alchemist to learn how to cultivate endurance, particularly for those plateau cycles when they feel frustrated, so that they don't let the frustration knock them off course and cause them to get back into the whole starting and quitting cycles. Part of this energy type is to learn to trust in source, learn to trust that there is a trajectory, there is a fulfilled path available for you, that you were born for something, that when you learn how to wait and respond and how to use the power of that sacral sound and dial into that internal rightness, or to know how to interpret that internal wrongness when you're not in the right place, that when you trust, that's when your trajectory will unfold. You will align with that trajectory through responding with your sacral energy. You will be taken to the right place at the right time, and you will experience the right opportunities for your ultimate fulfillment. Once you start following strategy, meaning you wait to see what shows up in your outer reality, to drop into your sacral or and you start to trust that internal vibrational quality of that compass, then you begin to move into the baseline expression of the generator, that satisfied, fulfilled expression of the generator. And over time, as you become more comfortable and you know what that right feels like in your body, that truth, and what that no, not right feels like in your body, you begin to move into that quantum expression as the alchemist, where you become the expert. You become the expert at becoming the expert. You learn how to cultivate a practice. You learn how to stick with it in a way that feels right and aligned, and how to cultivate through practice, growth, creativity, and mastery. Remember that you get to choose how you play with the archetype of your energy type. And there's nothing wrong, there's no problem with living in the conditioned expression. It's going to happen. We're all going to hit the conditioned expression. It will get triggered and inflamed every time we have a cycle of growth. Anytime you experience a cycle of disruption, or you get challenged, you are being stretched in your growth potential, it's normal for the shadow expression, for that not self-conditioned expression to get activated. The key is to not beat yourself up, to not judge yourself and criticize or be super harsh on yourself, but to say, oh, okay, this aspect of my character's personality, this whole not self phase of myself is really being inflamed right now. So let me be more gracious and loving and compassionate to myself in this cycle of growth. What story do I need to rewrite? What new narrative do I need to create in the context of whatever is going on in my life that takes me out of this conditioned expression and into the baseline? And then from that baseline, ultimately into the highest potential, the quantum potential. So we'll be going through the other 3 energy types. Be sure you're subscribed to the channel to catch the rest of those videos. And if you want to learn more about quantum human design, dig a little deeper, dive a little deeper, you don't have to do your online learning alone. I have a special offer solely supporting new and current students in the School of Quantum Human Design who use my referral links when enrolling in courses. You're supporting me by using my referral link, and in turn, I will support you with additional one-on-one guidance, tutoring, mentoring, coaching, or consulting. To learn more and download my free guide, you can just click on the Consult with Cass link in the description of this video. If you found value in this video, please give it a thumbs up, share it with a friend, subscribe if you're not already, or leave a comment and share what part resonated with you the most. If you don't know what to say, you can always just share the eye emoji. Sending you only love. I'll see you in the next video.